Namo Buddhaya. A king wanted to write down a quote on his sword to not to be too much happy when he wins and to not to be too much sad when he loses. Now this king found out that his mind gets too much obsessed when he wins and his mind gets too much obsessed when he defeats. So he gave this job to write down a quote on his sword to his mentor. So the mentor thought for a while and he simply wrote down these amazing 4 words on his sword. It said, "This too shall pass." I'll repeat it again. This too shall pass. See, when we live in this world, there are worldly conditions that we have to experience in this world. The Buddha named these worldly conditions as 8 worldly conditions, Atta Loka Dhamma. In Dutiya Loka Dhamma Sutta, the Buddha explains this, that because the whole world revolves around 8 worldly conditions. And the 8 worldly conditions revolves around this world. What are these 8 worldly conditions? The Buddha explains that gain and loss is a worldly condition, and praise and blame is a worldly condition, and fame and disgrace is a worldly condition, and pleasure and pain is a worldly condition. So these are the worldly conditions that we go through and we experience in all of our lives. Now the problem is not having to go through these all worldly conditions. The problem behind this is our minds get too much obsessed with these worldly conditions. When we win, our minds get too much attached to it, and we forget that this victory won't last forever. And when we lose and when we defeat, when we fall down, our minds get too much obsessed with that defeat, and we think that this defeat, this sadness, this suffering will last forever. But in reality, all good things come to an end, and as well as all bad things come to an end. Nothing lasts forever. So how can we live by not being attached to this winning and losing, and not being attached to any kind of these worldly conditions? Now Buddha shows us the way to not to be attached to any kind of these things. The way to do that is to simply understand the nature of all these conditions. What is the nature? The nature of all the worldly conditions is they are subjected to change. Right? When you win, it is subjected to change. When you lose, it is subjected to change. And it is impermanent. Simply, you can remind it to yourself that this too shall pass. Okay? When you hit the rock bottom, when you go through problems, when you go through difficulties in your life, just remember to yourself that this too shall pass. This pain, this suffering too shall pass. And when you win and when you're happy and when everyone cheers for you around you, always remember to yourself that this is not going to last forever. This too shall pass. That is one of my favorite quotes that I read recently. It says, "When you win, you are not good as you think you are. And when you lose, you are not bad as you think you are." So when you win, everyone will cheer to you, everyone will congratulate you, everyone will say good things about you, but always remember, you are a man. You are a human. You are imperfect. And everything is subjected to change. Now, this does not say that you should not enjoy winning. You should not enjoy victory. You can enjoy victory. You can be happy about it. But simply understand this winning, this victory won't last forever. And when you lose, you have to remember to yourself that you are not bad as you think you are. You can learn from your mistakes, you can learn from your fails, and you can always improve yourself and always think that this is not going to last forever. This pain is not going to last forever. By simply understanding that everything is subjected to change, nothing is permanent in life, will help you to achieve a happier and more fulfilling life by not being attached to any kind of these extremes. When you win, do not be too much attached to it. And when you lose, do not be too much attached to it. Then you will be happy.
Imagine you're having a rough day and you're scrolling through social media. And you see these nice pictures, people are celebrating their life, having the best days in their life, celebrating and becoming happy. When you see these pictures, what do you feel inside? Sometimes we feel even more stressed and we feel like there's no value in our life. One of the biggest enemies of our happiness is comparing our life with others' lives. There is some sort of jealousy and envy that builds up in our life, in our mind. That is why becoming envious and jealousy and comparing our lives to others is one of the biggest enemies of our happiness. To overcome this, the Buddha introduced a special practice, and that is called mudita. Mudita means appreciative joyfulness. Always remember, when we compare our lives to others, and when you build up that jealousy and envy within yourself, it is not going to help in your success, in your life, right? Sometimes, like we stop in a certain place, okay? We hold on to one emotion and we stay in that envy and jealousy and thinking about other people's lives without making our life successful, without focusing on our life. So the Buddha said, when you see these successful people in the society, when people around you living the best days in their life and your life is not having such experience, always look up to them and think and wish the happiness of them. Okay? That is called appreciative joyfulness. Wish the happiness of beings around you, even though you are going through a tough time. When we see successful people, we should not be jealous at them. It is not going to help us. What we have to do, we have to wish the success on them. When you see someone is having the best days in their life, think of him and say, oh, may he be happy even more. May he have a prosperous and a happy life forever. If you do that, you're not going to give the space for that envy and unhappiness and that negativity in your mind. The more you practice this positive mindset, the more you practice this appreciative joyfulness, you can be happy about yourself. Even on the hard days, even though your life is in a tough place. So that is why whenever we see successful people, people having a happy life, we have to wish the happiness of them. That is called mudita. So when we practice this simple Buddhist practice of mudita or appreciative joyfulness, we can be happy about our life and also we can be peaceful within. If there is one thing in common in this world that all living beings search for, that is the happiness. We all like to be happy. We all seek happiness in this world. If I ask from you, would you like to be happy in your life? What will be your answer? You will say, of course, I want to be happy in my life. I want this peaceful state. I need to be in that. That is your answer. That is the answer of all living beings. Buddha says that all living beings likes to be happy and they seek the happiness. If you really think about our life, we are in a never-ending journey of pursuing happiness. Let me tell that again. We are in a never-ending journey of pursuing happiness. That means we are pursuing happiness, we are chasing and we are seeking for happiness, but yet we have not found it. So, what is the reason for this
not finding happiness. Why we don't find happiness in our life? We are seeking it, we are finding for it, but we don't find it. What is the reason? Well, the Buddha teaches us that we are finding or we are seeking this happiness from a source that the happiness does not exist. Because we are seeking happiness from external world. We are seeking happiness from these materialistic things. Well, when you seek happiness from materialistic things or external world, you get pleasure, but that is not happiness. Pleasure is something temporary and it gives you this instant gratification. But in happiness, the happiness is long-lasting and it gives you this happiness or the contentment about yourself. So that is why Buddha teaches us that you're finding the happiness from a source where the happiness does not exist. So the more you find it, the more you become frustrated. So, will we ever be able to find happiness in our life? The Buddha answers this question. He says, yes, you can find happiness in your life. How to do that? If you look closely to the first and the second verses of Dhammapada, Buddha says, if one with an impure mind speaks or acts, the suffering will follow him like a cartwheel following the ox. If with an impure mind one speaks or acts, the suffering will follow him. And in the next verse, Buddha says, if with a pure mind one speaks or acts, the happiness will follow him like a shadow following a man. So that means the happiness and the sadness entirely depends on the purity and the impurity of our mind. When our mind is pure, we can find the happiness. So, how can we find or how can we gain this purity in our mind in order to find the happiness? Well, Buddha teaches us there are a lot of things that you can do to make your mind pure. So today, I'm going to share with you a few things that can give you the happiness in your life, that you can find the happiness in your life. First thing, accepting the reality of life will give you the happiness. You know, life is full of ups and downs. Sometimes you have good days, sometimes we have bad days, sometimes we have beautiful memories, sometimes we also have miserable memories. So life is not something that is going equally every day. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. When you realize this reality, you can face these situations successfully, right? It is not always this bad experience makes us frustrated. It is our reaction towards this bad experience makes us frustrated. Whenever you get a bad experience or a bad day or a bad situation, tough situation, difficult situation, you have two choices. Either you can focus on the pain and feel miserable about that situation, or you can focus on the lesson that bad situation teaches us and learn from it and start growing your life. So, if you accept the reality of life, it is not temporary. Sometimes the people around us are not in our control. We cannot control their reactions. We cannot control their opinions. So when you realize these situations, you can face those situations successfully. That is one thing, accepting reality of the life. Number two, Buddha said, be generous. Practicing generosity is a major practice in Buddhism. Well, in Buddhism, the generosity is known as dana.
In dana, Buddha says that you have to give without any expectations. We have to give and we have to dedicate towards others without expecting anything in return. That is one thing that we have to practice. Most of the time, we like to hold on to things or gather the things towards us. That is what people think. When you gather more, when you collect more things, you will get rich and you will gain happiness. But that does not give you the happiness. It will give you the pleasure, but it is temporary. So what we have to do, Buddha says, be generous, give, help others, dedicate a part of your life on behalf of others. When you do that, when you become more generous, let's say like this, you gave some foods to a poor person, let's say like that. When you see that person is having those foods and overcoming his hunger and making his life much better, you can be happy by seeing that. When you become happy like that, you feel happy about yourself, right? Nothing can give you that happiness. Like by eating a good food, by dressing a nice dress, you cannot gain that happiness. You don't feel happy about yourself, right? Let's say after hundred of years later, maybe 10 decades later, when you think about that incident, I gave this food to this poor person. When you remind that, you feel happy. Even then you feel happy. That means happiness is long-lasting. So Buddha says, be generous, help people, do something nice every day for a person. That is one thing we can do. And number 3, forgiving. Forgiving is one of the most important things that we can do to create happiness in our life. We have to forgive ourselves. Also, we have to forgive others too. Because forgiving, when you forgive, it doesn't mean that you are saying okay to others' mistakes. It's okay. No, you're not saying like that. When you forgive, you make your heart free. So when you forgive, it's not for that person, it is for you. And also we have to forgive for ourselves. There are so many mistakes that we all have done in the past. If you hold on to past, and if you make this present moment miserable, that will not give you the happiness. So what do we have to do? Whatever the bad thing that we have done in the past, we have to have this ability to forgive ourselves and start all over again. We all have that ability, right? We all have that privilege to start our life again and make it a better one. Okay? So no one is perfect in this world. We all have done mistakes. One thing that we have to do is to forgive and start doing good things. So these are 5 things that we can do to create happiness in our life. And also, there is one happiness that is called the ultimate happiness in this world that the Buddha teaches us. That is called Nibbana or Nirvana. That is the enlightenment. When you realize about the reality of this life, and when you remove this desire or the craving that arises within your mind, then Buddha says that is the ultimate happiness. Simply, the Nibbana means Ragakkayo, Dosakkayo, Mohakkayo, Nibbana. That means removing of the desire, anger, and the delusion of the mind is called the enlightenment. So that is the highest level of happiness that we all can reach. So when you practice these practices, right, when you engage yourself in wholesome state, that will create you the happiness in the life. So practice these things and make your life a happier one. Namo Buddhaya.
The Buddha once said, "He who sits alone, lies down alone, walks alone in diligent practice, and alone tames himself, should find delight in living in the forest. Living alone, being alone, can be scary for many people these days. Oftenly, our society portrays a successful life, a happier life, a good life, as a life where it is surrounded by people, surrounded by things. But there's a reason why almost all the spiritual practices, almost all the spiritual pathways praise and promote this living alone, life in the place of a solitude practice, a solitude life. And that is why almost all the religious leaders had to solitude themselves from these hassles and bustles of this society and go to these quiet places and find the liberation and find what they were looking for. Same went with the Supreme Buddha. Before he became the Buddha, he was a prince. He was living in a palace. He was indulging himself with this sensual pleasure. And then he understood, indulging in this sensual pleasure doesn't help me to find what I'm looking for. So what he did was he left the palace and he went from one forest to another, meditating, finding this peace, this ultimate peace, right? So living alone can be a blessing. It is a blessing when it is converted to a blessing, right? But living alone can be a curse as well for many people. That is why people most of the time they are scary. They're afraid of living alone, right? Most of the time people come to me and say, I'm lonely, I'm living alone, I'm living by myself, but I feel so much lonely, so much negative thoughts coming into my mind. What should I do? That is what happens when you turn this loneliness into a curse. Trust me, it all depends on how you think and how you use this time. I will tell you a story. Prince Siddhartha, the Buddha, left the palace and he went to a forest. Although he went to a forest, there were 5 monks who was waiting for him to come to the forest. There were 5 monks who were helping Prince Siddhartha, the Buddha, with the meditation before his awakening. And then these 5 monks had this idea that only way to find the liberation is by giving this tortures and doing these hard meditations and harsh meditations and extreme meditations. So we call it Atta Kilamatthana Yoga, which we can translate into English as self-mortification, right? Now, Prince Siddhartha left one extreme when he left the palace. That extreme is, the Buddha described this as the extreme of sensual pleasures, indulging in the sensual pleasures. That was one extreme. And then Prince Siddhartha came to the other extreme, where he practiced this self-mortification, giving these extreme and harsh meditations to the body. And then those 5 monks, they believed that this is the only way for the liberation. So Prince Siddhartha was practicing these meditations for 6 years. And finally he understood, this extreme, being in this extreme, doesn't help me either. So then he found the middle path, the middle way. And that is to live a spiritual life by balancing his material and spiritual life both, right? And that is why after that decision, he decided to take some food to his body. After a long time he had taken some food to his body, he grabbed his alms bowl and went on begging alms and find some food and had it. Now all those 5 monks had a lot of expectations on Prince Siddhartha. And then they saw this incident. And then they became disappointed. They said, oh, what a disappointment. We believed him. We had a lot of expectations on him. But look what now happened. He's taking food. Maybe soon he will go back to his palace and he will live a normal life again. So the best decision is to leave him. So what happened? All these 5 monks left Prince Siddhartha. And after this alms round, he came back to the forest, and he saw everyone had left. No one was there. Prince Siddhartha was alone. Then he found this perfect environment, perfect place to be focused more into himself. That was because he was all alone. Right? He got the opportunity to be by himself. Right? Focus more into himself. And one day, he sat under the Bodhi tree and he became awakened. He became enlightened. Right? So this solitude, when it is turned to, when it is used in the correct way, it can be a blessing for you. Right? And the same solitude can be turned into a curse as well. Right? Most of the people, they complain me about the loneliness. I always say to them, when you're lonely, your thought process generates a certain energy within you. Right? And that can be negative. Now let's say you are in this negative energy environment and a negative energy thought process. You all know in science we learn about, according to science, it says that energy cannot be produced or destroyed. Now you have your energy within you, but it is negative, right? Now you can't destroy this negative energy, right? What we are trying in this whole life is to destroy this negative energy. Well, we can't do that. The only thing that we can do is to convert this negative energy, drive this negative energy to something positive, right? So how can we drive this loneliness, this energy to something positive? One of the biggest reasons why people feel lonely is because they lack an aim, a goal to their life. If they have a goal and aim that they should work on, if they have a system that they should work on, then they don't feel that much lonely because they have something to do. They have something to engage with it, right? So this can go either, people can have either material goals or spiritual goals, but everyone must have these spiritual goals within themselves, no matter what life they are coming from, right? Because finally, there will be a time in all of our lives that we come to this lonely place. One day we have to be by ourselves with no one else around us, right? At that time, if we don't have any quality, any spiritual quality that we have practiced within us, we'll start feeling lonely again and again. And it will start to build up this negative energy within us, okay? And sometimes we can be too late for that, to make it correct. So the best thing is to learn how to convert this negative energy to something positive, right? To do that, you have to have a goal and an aim for yourself, to yourself. Always ask from yourself, what should I do in my life? Who should I become in my life? What should I build up? What qualities should I work on in my life? If you found, we will always find some qualities that we should work on, right? Some mistakes that we have, some weaknesses within us. If we can work on those weaknesses and make it correct, that time will help you to be more successful, more productive, right? More happy and a more peaceful person. But to do that, what do you need? You need time, right? You need time to be focused on yourself. And what gives you the best time to be focused on yourself is the time when you are all alone, right? And that is why I always say for people, have a time during the day only for yourself, a separate time. Probably people call it me time. Okay, that's a good thing. Having a me time for yourself during the day is essential. Okay, so I would say as a practical thing, apply it to your life. That is to have a separate, at least 15 minutes. It's okay, no matter how much you spend the time, but if it is for yourself, that is helpful, right? At least spend a 15 minutes of time, right? Sitting down, being by yourself, all alone, right? Not with your mobile phones, not with your Netflix account, not with your movies or anything. Just be by yourself, right? And then learn how to be with your own thoughts, right? Then only we can be more focused to ourselves, right? So I hope you got some idea about how to convert this loneliness into the solitude. So apply this little practice to your life and enjoy the solitude in your life. Namo Buddhaya.